Welcome back. I'm glad you're watching Morning Express. Time now for The Way It Is. And for this conversation, we're joined by lawyer William Okech, who was here for a newspaper review segment. Thank you for staying with us, William. And we also have Jackton Obure, who is the MP aspirant to Sambo County. We'll also be joined later on by Mombasa Senator Omar Hassan. And our conversation this morning focuses on the bid for AU Commission Chairperson, Foreign Affairs, CS Amina Mohammed, among the 5 candidates who are battling it out for that position. Whether she will clinch the position will be known by the end of the day. We'll also be focusing on that dawn attack on Friday on KDF forces in Somalia. Al-Shabaab claims to have killed about 57 Kenyan soldiers, but the Kenyan government claims the number was much less than that. We'll be focusing on that as well. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us. And let's begin with you, Jackton. A lot of pomp now over Amina Mohammed's candidature at the AU Commission Chairperson. Do you think she stands a chance of being the next chairperson?
Yeah, personally, I think she stands a chance, bearing in mind she was one of the very active CS we had, and just going around and, just putting Kenya on the map. So to me, I think she's done well, and I'll prefer if she gets that chance, because at the same time, now Kenyans will be on the map again in the world. So I'm very positive, and let's see how people will vote. Right.
Yeah. But that is a question we're asking you this morning on our question of the day. Do you think CS Amina Mohammed stands the chance of clinching the AU Commission Chairperson? Do you think CS Amina Mohammed stands the chance of being the next AU Chairperson? Do talk to us on Twitter at KTN News, at KTN Kenya, at Michelle Ngele. That is a question. Do you think CS Amina Mohammed has a chance of being the next AU Chairperson? You can also use hashtag Morning Express KTN. All right, and William, of course, among the bigger discussions is some of the factors that will influence this election. Among them, of course, is the candidate's experience, but also the ability to solve emerging problems in the continent. We're talking about drought, insecurity, a failing economy. Do you think CS Amina Mohammed has exuded enough confidence in tackling these particular matters?
CS Ambassador Amina Mohammed has all the needed credentials. Talk of her education, talk of her experience. She's served in very high levels in those diplomatic cycles. But this election really is going to be hinged on several geopolitical factors. One, for a very long time, you find that West Africa and South Africa, they had dominated the geopolitics of the African Union. Previously, the OAU. Increasingly, after coming in of the Jubilee administration, you found that Uhuru Kenyatta had aggressively marketed Kenya. He played a critical role, especially at the backdrop of the ICC cases. Uhuru Kenyatta came out strongly, and he was one of the African heads of station which was calling out for the withdrawal of Africans from the Rome Statute. But really, when you look at, because the elections will be pegged on some of the regional blocks. You have ECOWAS for West Africa, you have SADC for Southern Africa, the East African. The strongest competitor to Ambassador Mohammed will be ECOWAS candidate, who is the candidate for Senegal. ECOWAS has proven its mettle. We just saw recently with the incident in the Gambia, where the ECOWAS troops and the heads of state, they were very firm. Yahya Jammeh had lost the election, he had to go. They put their feet down and he went. That will be a plus for that candidate. Right. However, our solace is that within West African ECOWAS states, we have Anglophone and Francophone countries. There seems to be a split. The West African Anglophone countries seem to be supporting Kenya, talk of Nigeria, talk of Cameroon, they seem to be supporting Kenya. That is our solace. If Ambassador Mohammed is able to go through the first round, then our hopes are that she'll ultimately come out as the consensus candidate. She pushed very strongly the issue of the ICC. That one could be a favor with those countries which have backed that call for Africans to get out of that Rome statute. So she does stand a good chance.
All right, and I like that you bring in the ICC factor. Jackton, this is something that has spearheaded Amina Mohammed's bid for the AU chairperson position. But A lot of critics say the reason why Kenya has really pushed this position is because of the ripple effect of the now collapsed ICC cases. As we speak, the International Criminal Court is quietly getting more evidence on allegations of witness tampering during the ICC cases against Uhuru and Ruto. I mean, do you think that could be a reason why she's being pushed so high?
You know, it can be political as we look at it, but then again, I also think her being there as our CS for Foreign Affairs and the kind of work she has done as the ambassador, bearing in mind the issues of ICC, because as far as I'm concerned, the issue of ICC is a past tense to the country. And what we want is that we want her to go there and represent the whole Africa. As much as there is much politics that is being played down, and, you know, me and everybody knows what ICC is doing behind the scene, I don't think that can be a very good reason for them to do that. Yeah, but personally, I think she's done a good job. She's been there. And if she gets that position, then I think Kenya will be happy.
Right. I mean, let's get to William's thoughts. Do you think ICC is past tense, as he says?
No, not necessarily so. The issue of ICC is still an issue on the table. You are aware that there is a majority of Kenyans, talk of the civil society movements, talk of those who really farm about the rule of law. They're worried that should you take Kenya out of the ICC, then where will be the mechanisms for accountability? Right. Especially that now the preferred African Union court, that is the African court, they have made it, the heads of states have made it very clear that one of the objectives will be to ensure that serving African heads of state are granted immunity against prosecution so long as they are serving, despite any other crimes that they may have committed. That will be very worrying, because you'll find yourself now, where will be the accountability mechanisms for those people who come under the wrath of dictatorial regimes? So I think ICC in Kenya, it's still not a done issue. There's still debate going forward. But despite, and I said it, despite our local politics and our local differences, we ought not to begrudge the ambassador this chance. It will be a plus for Kenya. Let us support us. The ICC issue, when it comes up, Parliament will debate it, and all stakeholders will have a say. Yes.
And I mean, Jackson, William also brought on the issue that she could gain more favor with regard to the ICC, because there's now the threat of a mass walkout from the ICC. You know, is that something that is likely to give her more, you know, a boost in this election?
Yeah, I think that one can give her a boost, because, you know, when as a Kenyan country, what was happening is that we wanted to pull out of the Rome Statute. And, you know, there was a lot of mobilization, and, you know, guys were being told, most African countries, this is the way we should do it, and this is the way to go. But as my colleague just said here earlier, as much as personally I think as a country, the president and the deputy were cleared from all this, but still, if you look at Africa at large, there's still some leaders who are dictatorial, and some of them also think that it's not a good idea to pull out. Some of them also think that there are people who still are going to suffer when this kind of thing happens. But bearing in mind the kind of activities that took place during that time, I think she stands a chance, because most of them are supporting that.
All right. Right, and allow me now to introduce Mombasa Senator Omar Hassan. Many thanks for joining us in studio this morning. A lot has been said about Amina Mohammed's candidature at the AU and about her credibility as well. But, you know, in your view, does she have the capability of clinching this position?
You know, the only reason I'm supporting Amina Mohammed is, one, because she's a Kenyan, and secondly, because I don't know the other candidates. Their profile in terms of their standpoints on various issues. But I mean, if Kenya is going there because it wants to present a front of impunity, a front of, anti-ICC, I mean, how many African countries today, apart from Botswana, essentially follow African leaders when it comes to human rights standards? So the AU cannot bask itself in the glories of the yesteryears of policies of non-interference, policies of, not being a peer enough, in the, let's say, to other countries. Kenya today should have been a country that exports values. Kenya should have been a country that exports democracy. Kenya should have been a country that is a beacon for others to emulate. We don't want to go there to start abrasive politics of ICC and but and all these other excesses that have painted Africa in bad light. Are we able to tell leaders like Yahya Jammeh, once you have lost an election, to move out and things of that nature? So she has my favor just because I don't know the rest of the people and because she's a Kenyan. But if there was a person I was told, let's say, of sound human rights credentials, a person of a certain grit and a certain attitude and a certain capacity and a certain transformative agenda of the AU, to now make the AU a more robust movement, a more robust organization, imbibe the Pan-African agenda, on social economic rights, and to ensure that Africans, grow their economies and fight corruption and imbibe democracy, to make our people better off than what they were, what they are. I think that would have been a progressive mind. Yeah, having even redefinition of the AU Charter and our relationships as states. But everybody else just wants it for prestige, the prestige of a country. What is the Kenya's agenda for the AU?
So you do not think she is qualified for this job? Because I believe on the Standard this morning, there's a whole page on her credentials and, her working with the UN, her being Foreign Affairs Minister.
Qualified she is. Qualified she is. She's worked with she was an ambassador in Geneva. She then was Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Justice. Then she became, she worked with the United Nations, and then she came in here. Qualifications you do have, everybody. It's like when you say you need 10 years to become a judge or something of that nature. She does have the minimum qualifications. She does have. But whether she has the capacity, or the not capacity, but the grit, the courage to tell Africa that you're wrong now. We need to move forward an agenda that is more progressive. Look at our countries. Look at our nations. They're all dilapidated in terms of poverty. Look at what is happening. You look at the corruption. Look at the reversal of democratic gains. So this is what Africa needs to imbibe. Forget these niceties of in the 20th century, 21st century, you're fighting. You're still trying to have to institutionalize impunity. I think these are some of the issues: human values, universal rights, social justice. Right. That's what Africa needs to redefine itself.
Right, and very credible issues are being brought up, William. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, just like Senator said, despite our own ideological differences, she is Kenyan. She is the face of this country. AU, the chair of the AU Commission, is a very critical role in terms of policy initiatives, in terms of bringing out the issues that matter. And I think I would like to loud the call that Ambassador Amina should she win, then her core agenda should not be to take Kenya out of the ICC. It should be to tackle the issues that are currently bedevailing the continent, talk of poverty, talk of misrules, talk of the issue of even the women agenda and youth. Those are issues that she should tackle. Yes.
And
the country, Michelle, that has been quite on the right side on many of these arguments in the context of Africa, I'll be very honest, is Botswana. Botswana has demonstrated itself as a country that is able to live strongly within the Charter of the AU. First country to not to recognize Yahya Jammeh immediately. His tenure ended. It spoke about that it was the only country that had assertively said it was not withdrawing from the ICC. It is the only country that talks about certain travesties of African leaders across the world, across the continent. And I think that's what Africa needs. This camaraderie, this comradeship of impunity, this coalition of crime and coalition of impunity should stop. That's what Africa is about. That's what African Union is about.
All right, let's have your final word
and then
before we move
interestingly, Senator is quite right to find that Botswana has a candidate. But then pundits have rightly said that the candidature of the Botswana former Foreign Affairs Minister is going to be hurt by the tough stance that was taken by the President Ian Khama. Ian Khama actually removed himself from AU meetings. The last he attended was about 2 or 3 years ago. He's been very critical of some of the AU stances, and that will certainly hurt the candidature of that person from
Right.
Botswana.
And Jackson, before we come to you, earlier you'd mentioned something rather interesting because the ICC issue seems to be coming up a lot with Amina Mohammed's candidature. On the front page of the Star today is a story about the ICC reviving its case on allegations of witness tampering with regard to the ICC. And Senator Omar, Jackson seems to think the ICC is a done and deal issue. It's in the past now. Do you agree with that?
What do you mean?
That's what he says. He says ICC is no longer an issue.
No. What I was saying in terms of, you know, when we are talking of Ambassador Amina's candidate, and then we bring the issue of ICC. To me, I think as a country, of course, there are some issues that are still there. There are some, you know, we still have IDPs. We still know very well that there was some tampering of witness, and you know, that is something that is still in progress. But when it comes to the issue of Amina's candidature, I don't think the issue of ICC should arise.
You know, whether Kenya withdraws from the ICC or not, it does not affect the cases before it currently. That is Kenya. It's called Kenya 1 and Kenya 2. That is the one. Kenya 1 is the case on William Ruto. Kenya 2 is out of Uhuru Kenyatta. And the cases were not withdrawn. People think that those cases were like, you know, there was a nolle prosequi or something. They were not. They were just put aside. They are dormant. In the event that there is, based on all those considerations, lack of cooperation by Kenyan state, withdrawal of critical witnesses from the case, in fact, an unprecedented withdrawal of critical witnesses in any situation that has been prosecuted by any international mechanism was the Kenyan situation. Disappearances and intimidation of witnesses, among many other things. So in the event witness so decide they want to restate the evidence and certain new information comes before the ICC, those matters could proceed, not even in the next 5 years or so, unless the trial chamber now decides to you know, totally make a ruling that says that the cases are to that extent withdrawn. But in the meantime, if you read the ruling of the trial chamber, it was just about they were set aside briefly on the basis that there was not enough evidence. That was the application by the prosecutor, the witness tampering, the unprecedented withdrawal of witnesses, the lack of cooperation by the Kenyan state, plus other mitigating issues that necessitated the prosecutor to ask that the matters be stayed.
All right, and I will be keeping an eye on how that works out. But let's move away from this because we'll be watching the situation with the elections. But on Friday, Kenyans woke up to news that KDF soldiers in Somalia had been attacked in another dawn raid by Al-Shabaab militants. And initially, Al-Shabaab said it had killed 57 Kenyan soldiers, something that the Kenyan army denied. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding this as to whether that was the actual number or whether the number was 9, as was said by the Kenyan army. But let's begin with you, Senator Omar. Your thoughts, first of all, on this very horrendous death of our soldiers.
First and foremost, my utmost condolences to the families and to the victims of for whatever happened. I think I share in the point of view that Kenya must be bringing its engagement in Somalia to a sunset. There must be a phased withdrawal, and let's safeguard our territorial borders. Let's retreat into our territory, and allow some of these positions to be taken up by the Somali National Army, because the only solution to Somalia rests with the Somali people themselves. And I think the best thing is to equip and capacitate the Somali National Army to secure the integrity of the Somali state. So for us, I think a protracted engagement that has no timetable of withdrawal is detrimental. We need to stabilize Somalia, and we need to get out as soon as we can. So when we say withdraw from Somalia, we don't mean you pick up your tools like what we did in South Sudan and just start flying the soldiers back. I mean, you have a phased withdrawal, that the positions you occupy at this point in time are then taken over by the Somali National Army. So you train and tool the Somali National Army to be able to take up the positions that the AMISOM troops or any other troops will disengage from. The number two is someone tell the Standard they did the right thing, you know, to report accurately, because every international media is telling us that the deaths were in excess of 60. This Kenyan, perception that when you hide facts is when you are doing the country a service is lack of patriotism. We have the right to know. When American forces are blown up by improvised explosive devices. They tell the public. You cannot tell us that we don't know how many people were lost in the last in Elad, when yet we know that about 100 plus Kenyans did not return home. Let's stop this crap of thinking that you only express your patriotism. In fact, the freedom of information, the right to know, that headline by the Standard was appropriate. We need to know what is going on so that Kenyans can make accurate decisions. This pseudo patriotism that you hide facts and conceal figures, and that you publish a denial of the KDF alongside a figure that the entire international media has confirmed or is carrying. So what is this thing about Kenyans thinking patriotism means you do not report accurately? Right. So I think I think that they did the right thing, and as I said, that the court position is to evaluate our engagement in Somalia.
Jackson, do you agree with Senator Omar with regard to the withdrawal of troops from Somalia?
Oh, personally, I think first my condolences to the family, but there must be an exit, strategy, and this is my personal view that this should have happened a long time ago. As you know, our soldiers are dying every now and then. There's no proper reporting. As you know, most of the information are being hidden from us, but the families are suffering. If you look at the families who've lost their breadwinners, there are so many. But anytime the media reports, the number is less than what we know and everybody knows. So I'll agree with the senator that we must have an exit strategy, but that doesn't mean that we just come out immediately, because there's a capacity. We've done our best in Somali. It's high time now we bring back our people, right, so that at least Somali can now be by themselves so that they can take care of themselves. It's very sad when after 6 months, 3 months, our brothers are dying and without trace. Some have even not been traced from, and their family don't know. But this is something that is being played quietly. I don't know the reason as to why. And 3, 4 months down the line, some families will come up. We've never been compensated. We've never seen our kin. So I think it's just unfortunate what is happening in the country. We must get the right information. We must know what is happening. And I'll also agree that with time, we should bring back our men, our soldiers.
And I mean, William, when we were speaking earlier, we were speculating on this lack of transparency over this entire issue and the number of soldiers that indeed died. And the question was whether this is a ploy to cover up cases of mismanagement by the top management, because like we mentioned, this attack happened in exactly the same way like the Elade attack. And the questions, lessons seem not to have been learned. Oh,
yes, quite right. I think we need to draw parallels. You have Burundian forces in Somalia, you have Ugandan forces in Somalia. Some time back, an incident had happened where the Ugandan base in Somalia had been attacked. And for a very long time, there had been low soldier morale due to some inefficiencies of the seniors. Talk of squandering of funds, selling of supplies. The Ugandan military establishment reacted very differently. All those commanders were dismissed. They were summarily called back home, and all of them were subjected to military trials, court-martials, and they had to be accountable for what they did, and new people were deployed. In Kenya, that has not been the case. In Kenya, we seem to operate on this mode of hush-hush. When something goes wrong, no one takes the blame, no one is accountable. Kenya suffers greater than even these other nations which have forces there. The ideals of Operation Lead and Inchi were very fine at the initial stages. We were to get in there, dismantle the Al-Shabaab's operational efficiencies, and then thereafter create a buffer zone between them and us, especially with regards to the Jubaland. But then you find that when you get in a war and it gets protracted, then you fall at the risk of turning into an occupier, the VU into an occupier. The same thing which happened to the US in Iraq. And then when the moment you start engaging Al-Shabaab in guerrilla tactics, Kenyan army may be well-trained, good, but they may not be so well in guerrilla tactics. And that's when now you find that you start losing the initial objectives. It has been said, some certain confidential documents have said that conflict in itself is an industry in Somalia. There are warlords who reap millions of shillings, sale of charcoal, smuggling, contraband goods. And even quite sad, so there have been some information which has even linked Kenyan soldiers in this illegal sale of charcoal. So I think it is high time, as Senator said, as my brother said, we need a re-evaluation. Have we lost objectives of what took us there? And if we are not getting anywhere near those objectives, it's time to do a phased withdrawal.
And then, you know, when any army or any foreign force overstay their welcome in any country, they mutate into an occupation force. What will happen then is, because there are various violations of human rights by the Kenyan military, it's reported in various reports of the UN. You cannot agree with some reports and deny others. International bodies have reported on these issues. Bombing of innocent civilians, allegations of rape and other allegations of the Kenyan soldiers. So when these allegations continue to cement, they start to create a nationalist sentiment. And that's why, in fact, Al-Shabaab was born out of a nationalist sentiment to drive out, that is the Union of Islamic Courts, to drive out Ethiopia. Because Ethiopia ultimately was looked at as an occupation force when it came to restore President President Abdullahi. So these are some of the issues that we need to soundly debate and interrogate, whether our protracted stay in Somalia. And then my own other thing is just my analogy, strategic analogy about the bases we're creating. It appears we're creating small little bases, 120 soldiers, 200 soldiers. Now Al-Shabaab, when they come in droves of 200, 300, they will overwhelm you. And those are not the normal soldiers. They call themselves holy warriors. They've come for two reasons: either to exterminate you or to die. Right. They're not you who wants to go back to your family in Mombasa or wherever else. So these are some of the issues that we need to look at. When you're fighting a war that is also based on an ideology or belief, you have to disarm that ideology or belief, so that you can be able to now engage in a more conventional sense. So I think in my assessment, there's need for a rethink, in fact, of the overall strategy on Somalia by the international community and our continued AMISOM stay in Somalia, or including the Kenyan forces, and what contingents do we need to build? You know, when you hear the US or other big countries is in the country, the base is something like our old village. It's like a new town coming up. There's air support. There's literally a town building around it. You hear the fortification of these bases is an enormous thing. I think here, I don't know how we fortified, but it looks to me like if you get this run over, it's probably just the barbed wires and a couple of other, things. So we need if we are to, you put people at harm's way when you know that when Al-Shabaab puts in through 300 militia, they can easily overrun you and probably outweigh you in terms of the balance of firepower.
Right. And I'd still like to get your thoughts, Senator Omar, on the overall war against terror and the gains that have been made in the country. Just the other day, there was a letter circulating on social media, purportedly from the Kenya National Police Service, a warning of an impending attack by Al-Shabaab officials. Now, the Kenya Police Service came out and said that letter was not credible and was not from the Kenya Police. But there's been a lot of allegations, especially in the coastal region in this war against terror, that innocent civilians are being killed. There's a lot of extrajudicial killings and no explanation, all in the war of a fight against terror.
I think any engagements, any interventions by Kenya must be based, by our country, must be based on the constitutional standards. You do not fight terror with terror. You do not, just because this is a criminal gang, do not now officialize crime. Because these guys are killing, you don't start killing. Your values, your constitutional doctrine is much higher. That's how countries behave, and that's how you disarm even the ideology of terror. When the terror is not just an action, it's not an act, it's an ideology. It manifests itself with what people call violent extremism. You start with extremist ideas, and you graduate it, gradually and deliberately to the point where you now engage people with respect to violence. So when you want to disarm that, you have to disarm it from the very root. So what happens? What's the narrative of terror? It's about victimization. It's about humiliation. It's about rights of Muslims. It's about you guys not doing enough for us. You've marginalized us. And the more you apply strategies that tend towards violations of the Constitution, it actually is the fodder. It waters that ideology or that narrative, and it becomes it becomes a dominant narrative. So the counter narrative, including the occupation or our intervention in Somalia, if you look at it, is about a liberation of holy lands and Muslim lands that have been occupied by infidels. Be it in Syria, be it in Palestine, be it in Iraq, be it in Afghanistan, be it in Somalia. It's one of the fronts that is looked at in the global war on terror. So Kenya becomes a very potent enemy when it comes to the networks of terror. So based on that, we must disarm all those elements. That's why Obama tried to withdraw the troops from Afghanistan, from Iraq, so that you disarm that narrative. So we need to constantly disarm these narratives by appearing that we attack the very foundations of it.
Right, all right. And gentlemen, let's move away from this discussion now and focus on another story that's developing in the country, and that is 57 days now since doctors went on strike. There seems to be no end in sight just yet, and now the doctors' union is claiming that private cartels are untwisting the government in these negotiations in a bid to ensure that they do not lose their profits, in different parts of the country. Jackton, let's begin with you. This is a new twist now in this stalemate. 57 days later, Kenyans are still dying. Which way out?
I think as a country we should come up clear on this issue of doctors, because you'll find that I also lost in the last 1 month. I've lost 2 or 3 of my close relatives just because of these doctors' issues. And as somebody who comes from, like my area, I personally think that it's really even affecting the poor people more than, these other people, the rich, because now some can go, some have private doctors. To others, their life will continue, but there are so many people who are suffering. So I think this is something that we should not even be discussing. It's something that even the doctors should already have agreed with the government on, the way forward for them now to come back and work. Because if you use threats and intimidation, telling them we are going to sack or we are going to bring other doctors, that one will not solve the problem. The court cases, and they are being threatened, you will be jailed and everything. I think it's just unfortunate as a country and in this era that we still threaten people. We still have this mechanism of, we just don't want to face the reality, what is happening on the ground. I think the ministries that are in charge, they should have already settled out this and, sit down. And it's true, it might be true that, there are some hidden forces that are playing it down, because I still wonder, 60 days and nothing still has come up on the table.
And we'll be talking to Senator Omar to tell us whether these private cartels are being seen or felt in the coastal region. But William, I mean, bringing the cartels in is a big deal now, because it revolutionizes this entire story. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh yes, during a spat between former President Mwalimu Nyerere and Jomo Kenyatta, Kenyatta had then referred to Tanzania as a man-eat-nothing society. In return, Nyerere referred to Kenya as a man-eat-man society, meaning it was then a deeply capitalistic country where you find that owners of capital, once they bring in their capital, then they will expect that their overriding objective was to accumulate as much profit as possible. There has been in existence for a very long time very strong lobbies in the name of private interests who are keen to influence certain areas of public policy. Being that in Kenya, the area of lobbying has not been regulated, unlike the US. There's normally a very thin line between genuine lobbying and ulterior corrupt practices. I referred you to the example when the then Minister of Health, Charity Ngilu, was trying to bring in the universal healthcare cover. The private insurance sector players at that time really came out strongly to oppose this move, realizing that should Kenyans, the local Wanjiku, middle class, should they get this universal cover, then it will substantially have eaten away into their profit base. So they had every reason to fight it. So likewise, the claim by the medical union that the private sector has an hand in scuttling any outcome, it does have credence. Because when you find that when doctors in the public sector have been paid and their terms have been improved substantially, a lot, there'll be like a brain migration. A lot will move from the private sector to the government sector, and that will eat down in the profits which are there in the private sector. So it is a genuine concern, but at the end of the day, I think the national interest is very important. All players need to give and take, spirit of give and take, so that this issue is resolved once and for all.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Senator, talking of these private cartels, is this a thing that is being witnessed in the coast region?
I mean, I can't point any finger to it in particular terms, but there's definitely some currency that goes behind these types of things. That you secure a first-class medical service, public service, then public health, then it means ostensibly you kill private sector. And if you look at it, that the public healthcare is a massive cartel. Massive cartel in the sense that you spend a day or two in ICU in certain hospitals. You take it raids your bank account to 3 million shillings.
Right.
You go there and you spend a day or two. Your entire insurance is exhausted. Every other small element they want to admit you. Every other small element they want to do. Everybody these days is delivering through C-section. So you will start to wonder, maybe these narratives, are they true or they're not true? And I think it's important that we create a first-class healthcare service, because it's our element. You see, it depends on the philosophy of the country. If I today was to govern this country, I would pay 3 sectors very well: health, security, and education. Teachers will be the highest paid professionals. You will want to leave KTN to become a teacher.
Two of those
I'm telling
been taking place
everybody
in
will want to become a teacher.
industrial action over the past 2 years.
Absolutely. You want to become a teacher in this country. You want to become a police officer in this country, and you want to become a doctor.
Because, I mean, as it stands, I don't even think any kid wants to become a doctor anymore, seeing what doctors are going through right now.
There are only 3,500, a country that cannot deal, a council of governors that is inept, that's returning us to the outer years of the Nyayo regime. You see, if you look at the structure of how every governor carries himself out, they're just like any colonial lord or the one-party rule, provincial commissioner. All they care about is their motorcade and their facilities, and how much they are respected or not respected by another authority out there. So that's one thing, and they've reversed many gains democratically by just not being able to appreciate and internalize what devolution was all about. So when you have a national government that refuses to think that 8 billion is something they steal more than 8 billion a month, let alone pay the doctors in a year. So the cost of corruption is even much higher. This is about 3,500 people. You see, if you look at the wisdom of that CBA, you have doctors running from one locum to another, trying to make an extra 100,000 shillings. What you want to do is to lock that doctor into public service full-time. And pay is determined on the basis of workload vis-a-vis productivity. The workload of the doctors in this country is not in doubt. It's the only sector that can be evaluated almost on a scientific basis. Even for the lawyers, what does a legal department of a government do? How soon, if you come in with a legal matter, it doesn't have to be attended immediately. You can tell the guy come back 2 weeks later. The doctor has productivity. It is evident. It is done. They work 15 to 18 hours a day. I know it because I have doctors, friends, and relatives who work in public hospitals. And they've decided that they will not work in private hospitals because they want to give a service. So lock them in there. You make that, if you're saying, and this is said in good faith, and I see some people saying, oh, how the public servants are being paid this much. The impression you give us, or the impression we all get, the smartest guys when we finished Form 4, were the guys who were taken to the to the med school. The few super 160 at that time, 160 when there was only one medical faculty, and then the second one then added it to 200. The top 200 students were taken to the medical faculties in the country. And then they go through a rigorous 6-year training. And the medical students not even able to get a day out when others are celebrating. They do, is it 52 weeks out of the 54? Is it 50 weeks out of the 54? And then they do an internship. So you have said you are the best students. Then it only follows that they have to have the best pay. It's just logic, work of logic. So if you're going to take the brightest, then you have to also have the best in terms of service package. So for me, I think it's an entire philosophy of a country. When you start to underpay your doctors, you underpay your security establishments, and you underpay your teachers. It means your philosophy of life or your philosophy of state is skewed. And then you take a politician like me and overpay. You take another, bureaucrat somewhere and overpay. It means you actually are missing the point totally. So I think we need to rationalize pay, but we also need to motivate so that we create an industry that its productivity is seen. And when you pay people well, I want to believe, then you can call them to account even much more. Yeah. When you don't pay people well, that's when everybody comes and puts their jacket on a seat and then go to do the next thing. So that
and I'm glad that you mentioned that politicians are overpaid, and that gives us the right to take them into account, considering that they are paid by Kenyans' taxes. But there's a lot going on in the country with regard to drought, the drought situation, and who to be held accountable, whether our leaders are failing, whether the government is failing. But I mean, Jackton, are Kenyans blaming the government too much? Is this, because there's a lot to do with the climate as well, and it's not just, Kenya isn't the only country facing drought as we speak.
Personally, I also think that as a country, despite the issue of climate change and everything, we also need to be prepared. And this is something that has been going on, and of course we have people who know what's going to happen in the next few days or few months. It's something that we must, as a country, what we normally do is that when something happens immediately, that is the time we want to, go there and now start blaming each other. This should happen, this should not happen. But again, we've just talked about the issue of corruption, and there are so many things that are happening in the country, and there is some part of Kenya. I looked at the television just the other day, and I couldn't believe that is part of this country where people are suffering, and there is nothing, absolutely nothing, even water. So as much as we want to blame the government for it, then we also need to do something about that issue, because it's something that we know, and we must be prepared each and every time. It's unfortunate, but I also think that the government also should do more, and we don't want to see people dying because of drought.
Right. I mean, William, just before you speak, when President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto were giving their election promises, their campaign promises, they promised that every single Kenyan would have food and clean water to their disposal. It is just almost the end of their term now, and there's drought and there's no water, even in urban areas. How does this reflect on the leadership?
Not very good, because most of the pledges that are made during electioneering, most of them are aimed at only getting someone into power. The real task now comes once you're in government. What do you do with the promises that you made? Substantially, we have witnessed the government try to renegotiate some of these promises that it made. We've looked at the laptop issue. That promise has been graded down substantially, and now we have iPads. But on the issue of drought and famine, I think there could be several factors. One, of course, there are environmental issues. Over time, we say that Kenyans, for a very long time, due to the primitive culture of accumulation of private wealth, Kenyans have not been very good at conserving the environment, saving water towers, water catchment areas. Most of these have been grabbed, which has affected the rain patterns and substantially has contributed to this issue of global warming. That has brought us to where we are. But also, there are those agencies which are tasked with making sure that there's adequate food supplies. One of those is the National Cereals and Produce Board. It has not played its role very well. There has been a lot of issues of mismanagement, issues of corrupt practices in maize distribution. The other time, I just read in one of the dailies, even a simple matter as changing the kind of chemical that you use to tackle weevils in maize, the board of the National Cereals and Produce Board has not been able to do that. As a result, up to about 6 billion worth of maize seeds have been destroyed. Simple thing of just changing, making sure that this kind of chemical, the weevils have become resistant to it, it has not been able to do that. And then also in terms of distribution and pricing, there are a lot of farmers who are hoarding maize in the anticipation that the prices are going to go high. As of last week, I was telling you, right now, the price of maize meal of ugali is more expensive than chapati. That is very worrying. Yes.
I mean, Senator Omar, early last year, Kenyans were dying of floods. Early this year, Kenyans are dying of drought. You know, there's just a lot there that doesn't add up. But all we're talking of is the problem. What is the solution to this?
You know, there is no deliberate planning. Countries become what they are by planning. And then you have to add all these red tapes of corruption, etc. Food security. Any country that worth its soul must have an element of providing for food security. On one side, the CS agriculture is telling you they have enough food reserves, but then on the other side, Kenya are starving to death. So I think these are some of the things that are the concerns of a country. And this is poor planning. There's nothing else, you know. This country, God has blessed it abundantly. It's not faced by very harsh calamities. We don't have tsunamis and, you know, tornadoes and, you know, and all those harsh weather things that come with, you know, almost the wrath of God. But we are fairly moderated. We have enough time to plan between one unfortunate flood or La Nina, El Nina to the next theater of crisis. So the lack of planning, the lack of being strategic in how we plan for the times of calamities is something that bedevils us. So when you look, the solution is competence. Somebody's failing somewhere, and nobody in this country takes responsibility. That's the worst bit about it. He has just been talking about people taking responsibility in Uganda because of the failures of the Uganda People's Defense Forces, UPDF. So when you do anything here, people have compromised the security of this country. You know, there are corruption in security. Security apparatus is an act of treason. That's why I'm hoping one day I will be in a position to charge the Kenyans who brought those generals and their procurement structure, to charge them for those 15 scrap metal jet fighters they brought from Jordan. You compromise the security of a country. When you see those F5s, about 4 of them, which are serviceable, they're just making noise during Jamhuri Day. Right. They're not ready for combat. Those things can be brought down by a simple, you know, Shadoof. Those are 1970 aircrafts. It's like driving a Beetle, you know, in air. So just because there are others don't have those type of Beetles doesn't make it a modern car. So that type of situation. And then we had the opportunity to upgrade our military. Upgrading military means you're securing the integrity of your country and your citizens. And you bring us scrap metal from Jordan. Right. That person must be in jail. Whoever that person is, that person must be charged with treason, high treason against the state. So when you find people sacrificing the security of this country, you know, the well-being of this country, you know, citizens are dying because somebody is not taking responsibility. We need to start to punish this as criminal events and criminal episodes. So unless we start taking firm action, but when everybody else is a cabal of eaters and looters and a cartel to defraud your country, to defraud your nation, and then just, you know, show us that you're flagging off toilets and you're flagging off taps that you're commissioning to poor people. I saw a governor, unless that's a Photoshop, Alfred Mutua looking at some young boy showering because I hope that picture is alive. You know, I mean, looking at boy now looking like you have delivered ultimately. I saw another governor opening up a tap. Right. And then Uhuru Kenyatta came and opened a footbridge. In fact, Uhuru Kenyatta needs to punish the guy who told him to come and open a footbridge and remove that plaque that says that he opened a footbridge at Mombasa. These are the governors. Whoever told them to do those, they should be out of their governments by now. These are we have lowered our standards so low. I mean, people are commissioning everything in DSTV, in schools, toilets, stuff like that. You know, all of it has been launched and commissioned. And then you see people in photographs giving aspirants giving some shillings here, doing this there. You know, we have literally been very unfair to the poor in this country. We've humiliated them based on the fact that they're suffering or they have a certain position. And I'm glad you bring in the aspect of humiliation because, Jackton, you're an aspirant, MP aspirant, Roysambu County on the Jubilee ticket. And I don't know how you're going about, you know, asking your supporters to register as voters, but there's a lot of nerve in political leaders who make promises to Kenyans that I promise to give you food and water. And 5 years later, you got the very same Kenyans who are dying of hunger and dehydration and ask them to register as voters to vote for you again.
You know what is happening right now in the country? Even in Roysambu constituency, people are not willing to go and get the voters card. When we go to Mashinani there and talk to them and even ask them, some are even saying, we are tired, we don't want to vote again. You know, we are tired of false promises. We are even worse than before. And I think this is not happening not only in Roysambu, but most part of the country. I will tell you for free that when you walk around Roysambu and, you know, the IBC centers, you'll find 2-3 people, 2-3, 4. We might say that Kenyans, they like last-minute things, but I can tell you, even the IBC themselves, the kind of target that they wanted, the 2.8 million, they couldn't manage in those 2 weeks. But also, I think that it's high time for our leaders, and that's why I'm saying I'm ready as a young person to change that mentality, yeah, of giving false promises. It's about delivering, and this is not your money you're using. This is a taxpayer's money. And once you've given your constituents a promise, then you must deliver it. It doesn't matter how hard you work for it, because again, we are all politicians are, you know, most people saying, you guys are the same. At times you go and, you know, you want to sell your agendas, but people are resistant. They don't even want to come to your meetings because they know that it's just like the other person. But what we are saying is that I personally say that it's high time that we go there, we make promises. If you can make your promise and you're representing a ward or a constituency or a country or even a country for that matter, you must deliver that. And these are big promises, not like opening the, you know, the taps and waters. And there are more pressing issues that are facing our people down there. And this is something that most of us, we like going hiding, we give handouts, you know, you go give handouts. And at the end of the day, if you give that, that person 200 shillings, 150, what will he eat tomorrow? You know, so what they are telling me, and I think this is something that I've found out, that we don't want anything from you. We just want to hear what you have on the table, because we've been failed by the previous, you know, members of parliament. We elect them, they come with goodies, and at the end of the day, they disappear. This is the time they are coming back again to ask for votes. So we don't need your money, Jecton. We only need to see what are your plans, and if this one will change the livelihood of our constituency.
So you're not engaging in the handouts?
No.
That every politician seems to be giving?
At the end of the day, it's not about handouts. But let me tell you, as much as money is involved, because now when you have to make inroads here and there, it's a key thing. But as a young man who's been brought up in Roysambu and understand the problem of Roysambu, know each and every corner of Roysambu, I personally think that I need to do more than just giving the handout. If I have to upgrade a project that was started by these young boys, I'll do it. If they want a washing machine for, you know, a car wash, something like that, you can contribute something, because they'll tell you, this is where we are, this is what we are lacking. Bring them that machine, and you'll find out that when you go there, you'll find them working, and they're not idle. But if you meet them and give them 50 shillings, 100 shillings, tomorrow you'll come, they'll demand that from you. If you don't give them the next time, they'll chase you away. So that is what most politicians are doing. But this is something that now we want to change. That, you know, guys, you are here, this is what I have on the table. We have women groups, so many in Roysambu constituency. They have, you know, they call them round table banking, you know, and these small chamas, and, you know, there's a way they organize themselves.
Right.
If you boost them as women, then you've boosted the society. So I think the issue of handouts now doesn't work at all.
All right. I mean, and William, all right, let's hear from you, Senator.
Is still wrong. Now, how many washing machines will you continue giving? You know, these things of telling you I'm bringing you a washing machine or a car wash or whatever it's called, it's not good politics equally. Politics must be about policy. You show that you have a certain propensity towards a certain policy, and people evaluate you on the basis of your integrity, your experience, and your past. That's what happens in the United States of America. That's what happens in developed democracies. What happens is, this is Michelle Ngele. We want to take her as an anchor of one of Kenya's leading media house, KDN. She has demonstrated that she won the presenter. She did one or two other things. She has worked. She has gradually grown through the ranks. She then can manage being an anchor with a very leading media house. So that's how political CVs are also drawn. What has this guy done to influence and impact the society in one way or another?
Right.
If you want to start distributing material wealth, whatever it is, go and join Oxfam. You know, go and join humanitarian organizations. That's where these humanitarian things are done. So, but what you need to do is to demonstrate that you're going to do something in the National Assembly that will impact so fundamentally in policy. You will bring infrastructure by making sure that there's infrastructure development through your own participation in budgeting. You will make sure that through funds that are provided, certain areas of prioritization will be your mainstay of government, of your leadership. You must demonstrate that you have a certain, you will keep away from corruption. You'll not start going looking for tenders all over. And before you serve them, you become a tenderpreneur. So all these type of things, how you build a regime. When you want executive power, you must say that I'm probably a social democrat. I will employ strategies that bridge the gap of dignity or indignity, for that matter. I will have policies around social justice to ensure that we subsidize this. We will bring down the cost of food. We'll bring down the cost of living. We will remove taxes from all essential products that makes lives of Kenyans much more expensive. So, and you need to demonstrate that in a either collegiate or individual format as to what are the areas of interventions that you will seek out to do. I see all my people as doing tournaments. I never did these types of things, you know. People knew me on the basis of my policy orientation at the KCHR. And the reason I come here every Monday is because these conversations or dialogues are important for the country. To start disarming them from the narratives of the past, you bring them new ideas and try to influence the society to progress in a certain direction. That eventually we evaluate our politicians on the basis of merit, and rather than how many washing machines and car washes and canvases they've contributed to us.
All right. All right, gentlemen, many thanks for your contribution. Mombasa Senator Omar Hassan, Roysambu County MP aspirant Jackson Obure, and High Court Advocate William Okech on the way it is. A conversation that brings us a break here on Morning Express. We thank you for staying with us. Channel Life and Style is up next for the top stories this hour, and a sports chat with Robin Toskin later on. Don't go too far.